New here at 3, Kentucky's First Lady Britainy Beshear is sharing her concerns about cuts to programs to prevent child abuse in the Commonwealth. It comes as city, state, and local leaders raise awareness for Child Abuse Prevention Month. Recent reports show that Kentucky ranks the highest among neglect and abuse cases in the U.S. And during a rally today in Louisville, the First Lady said that the state is making progress, but if certain cuts get approved by the General Assembly, she says it could hurt that momentum.
We cannot abandon children in their time of crisis. And while I know that not every person in the General Assembly agrees with how this year's budget has worked out, that budget will cause us to take steps back instead of forward. Unfortunately, it includes massive cuts to the Department for Community-Based Services, which will cause a reduction in hundreds of social workers who are already handling massive caseloads.
And Kentucky state law requires anyone who notices signs of child abuse to report it.